Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today I want to talk about mastering and something I see a lot on public forums and in tutorials about mastering, which is to high pass just below your subnote. And today I kind of want to take a little bit more of an analyzing approach to that statement and kind of see if it's true, if you can really reduce the volume of your overall master and therefore have more volume for the frequencies that actually matter, or if it's a myth. So let's get into it. Alright, so here I have a project that I did a quick master for. My basic mastering chain here is a limiter, and I did some experimenting with some different effects on here, which I'm gonna talk about. Actually, I should set up the other setup that I had. It's 28.5. Alright, so I had 3 different setups and I've recorded them out for you. We have the first one, which is just a limiter. We have the second one, which is a limiter, and then before it has an EQ8 with a filter. This is something you often see in other tutorials. They basically say that there's a lot of rumble below the 30 Hz area, and that therefore you should always high pass your master so that you kind of reduce that frequency and kind of gain headroom for your later processing, so you can make all the other frequencies that you can actually hear a lot louder, because you can't hear that rumble. So it's useless information, and therefore you should high pass them. So that's this recording here. And then the final recording is a quick master where I enabled a multiband compressor that just has some crossovers but doesn't actually compress anything. As you can see, we have processor 1 here disabled for all of these bands. Oh, if I place it where my mic isn't, you can see if I go through them, processor 1 is disabled. So let's look at these waveforms really quickly. You can see the very first one. Yes, there might be some peaks here at the start of the kick, and there might be some peaks here. As you can see, we have some small peaks here with the bass, and you can see the sub kind of sits out there, but it's a nice and flat waveform. And you kind of get, you get nice transients, everything. So this is without any processing. Other than the limiter. If we now go over to this second waveform, you can see that the transient of this kick is all messed up, and there is this nasty ringing here, and that's because what the EQ is actually doing to your sound here is it's not just removing these frequencies, it's also shifting the frequencies around that curve in phase, so changing them over time. So a frequency that would normally start playing here now plays a little later, and that also counts for a frequency that starts playing here, aka the sub bass of your last bass note here. It kind of continues on ringing. You can kind of see almost how you can kind of imagine this wave going on for a little longer. You can kind of see it ring out here, and that's something we didn't have before. Again, as you can see here, we just have a nice clean kick at the start, where here it's all messed up because of that ringing. And the same goes for the multiband compressor, and actually for the multiband compressor it's even worse of an effect, because we're not dealing with one crossover, we're dealing with one over here, which is just above the sub region, and we have another crossover here. So even this might also have a little bit of an effect. I don't really know what the standards are for these, how much they affect the phase and how far in the frequency spectrum they go. But what that means, again, as you can see, you get this really nasty kind of ringing out of the bass note here, and you can also see the transient of this bass line is also impacted. You can see this is not very clean. It kind of has this wave. And if we go to the very first one, you can see we have a nicer, cleaner well, it's a little bit there still, but it's at least a lot cleaner. You can see the bass itself, the tone itself is there a lot more, even though um, we didn't do anything other than filtering. We're losing some of that tone. So as I mentioned, it kind of works with the phase. Now, a lot of people may assume that you can combat this with linear phase EQs, but there lies another problem. And linear phase EQs, basically what they do is they tackle that problem by just afterwards shifting the frequencies back, but they don't solve the pre-ringing or the ringing effect, so the frequencies get extended because we're doing this EQing and this filtering, and they kind of just shift it back and they don't really cut it off because that's not how EQs work. So what would happen then, I actually don't have a phase or a linear phase EQ set up, I believe. There might be one in the meld, I think, but for the sake of this tutorial I'm not gonna look it up. We're just gonna illustrate this. You can imagine that all these frequencies kind of get carried over to the start here. You will have like a little, almost like a fade into your kick sound. So you won't get this effect, but you will have that effect over here, just before the transient. And you'll have one over here where it kind of smears out the transient. Instead of going backwards, it goes forwards a little bit. So what I want you to kind of take away from this video is that you always need to check whether what you're doing, either being this filtering here or this dynamic multiband compression here, if that's actually achieving the effect that you want, not just by ear. Of course, it's really important that the tone is correct, but you also need to check if it's not messing up your transients, your waveforms in any way. And you can easily do that. I have this track set up here where I can just instantly record my master output at any time. It's really useful for resampling, and it's set to record after the the mastering chain, which is on here. If you want, there is a video on my channel explaining exactly how my whole template works. But I really want you to take away that if you ever master something, go and look in the waveform, go and see what's going on, and make sure that everything on the waveform kind of looks clean, and that will usually result in a better master. And lately I've therefore kind of turned away. I've never really done this filtering because I tend to fix that in the mix whenever possible. And lately I've also been kind of tending away from the multiband dynamics because it's an achievable sound in the mix. If you really carefully mix your track, you don't need a multiband dynamics here, and you can just slam it a little bit harder in the mixer or add a glue compressor or whatever, and that will also fix the dynamic problem. Multi-stage EQ, multi-stage compression will fix the same problem. So that's the thing I want you to take away from this. If you do have some mud frequencies, for example, I hinted that this can remove some frequencies, and that is true. It will remove those frequencies and it will give you more headroom, but at the cost of ruined transient. If you don't want that, maybe you say you have a background element that has some nasty frequencies in there, and you can see this massive like bump here at the lower end of the spectrum underneath your sub bass. Then just go in and find the element that's causing it and do it there. And preferably I've as close at the start of the sound as possible. As you can see, I have it here just after this filtering plugin. This also uses a lot of filters inside of it. So all my filtering happens here, and then what I do to get rid of all the post ringing, I just have an LFO tool that kind of cuts it off. That's how I get a nice clean kick. Here, as you can see, this is a much cleaner kick than if I would not turn that on. So yeah, this is kind of a quick little video. I didn't really have anything much to talk about, but I thought it would be fairly interesting to kind of talk about this, some of the things I see the most online, and kind of maybe debunk them a little bit. I won't say debunk them because it's still a useful technique, It's just you need to, if you have to apply that technique at the mastering stage, then your mix is just wrong. So you need to go back one step and fix your mix and fix it on a mixing level, so that you're not getting the phase issues and in the final waveform, but in individual tracks, so that you can then go back in these individual tracks and maybe remove some post ringing from that, because there's no way you're gonna be able to remove the post ringing if there's all other sounds kind of mixed in. So that's what I wanted to talk about. If you have any idea for future tutorials or whatever, feel free to let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe. I hope I can still upload every day. It's been a little bit tough to kind of come up with new interesting ideas and experiments. It's also the reason I haven't been streaming a whole lot lately. But I hope to get back into it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.